And it is the third day of chaos in Bangladesh. Protesters have been rallying across the country demanding the arrest of gunmen who shot and killed Sharif Osman Hadi, a key figure in last year's uprising that ousted Sheikh Hasina. Today, the customary funeral prayer for Hadi will be held in front of the Parliament building. His body will be then taken to the Central Mosque at Dhaka University, where members of the public will be allowed to pay their last respects before his burial there. Ahead of the funeral, security has been significantly tightened in the capital with strict restrictions imposed on flying drones around the Parliament complex. The United States Embassy in Dhaka has urged citizens to remain vigilant, warning that gatherings intended to be peaceful can quickly turn confrontational and escalate into violence. Meanwhile, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk has now called for a prompt, impartial, thorough and transparent investigation into the attack that led to Hadi's death and urged the authorities to uphold the rights to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and security of journalists at this critical time and prevent further escalation of unrest. Now, Amnesty International has also urged Bangladesh's interim government to ensure impartial investigations into the killing of youth leader as well as the subsequent mob violence. That violence included the burning of the offices of Prathamalo, the Daily Star, and Chayanot, the harassment of a New Age editor Nurul Kabir. Amnesty International further expressed alarm over the lynching of Hindu garment worker Deepu Chandradas following allegations of blasphemy. As news spread that the 32-year-old student leader died in a Singapore hospital on Thursday, crowds poured onto the streets in an outpouring of grief and anger. Several buildings were vandalized, including offices of media outlets perceived as favoring India, an ally of Bangladesh's ousted leadership. Now, on Wednesday, even before confirmation of Hadi's death, protesters demanding the return of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to Bangladesh marched towards the Indian High Commission in Dhaka, underscoring the growing strain in ties between the two neighbors since the collapse of her government. Now, Sharif Osman was a leader of the student protest group Inqilab Manch and was preparing to contest a parliamentary seat in the February 2026 national election. Bangladeshi police say a manhunt is underway to track down those responsible for the killing. All right, to discuss more, we're now being joined live by Dr. Konstantinos Xavier from New Delhi. He is a South Asia expert and senior fellow of foreign policy and security at Center for Social and Economic Progress. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, these visuals that we see right now, it definitely does remind us of 2024. First of all, I would like to ask you, what does the situation looks like there? And is Mohammed Yunus, who has been now put in charge, is he able to handle anything?
Thank you for having me. I think the next few hours and days will tell us the answer to your question. I think it's a very important one. Is the interim government, with the support of the security forces, if required, with support of a more present army, able to cater to order, security in Bangladesh? I think that's the greatest concern at this point. There are advisories by the US government, by India, that are cautioning about the situation. But above all, I think we often forget sitting here in Delhi that this is, after all, the 8th largest country in the world by population. It is a very young country. So things can always go wrong, as we see in this region. And the only thing we have, of course, is basic stability, security, that people feel safe in the streets, that diplomatic missions like India's are protected, and that there's a sense of safety. And that is at least, it's still there partially, but I think there's a big question mark on it.
And regarding that, how do you think India would, going forward, how would India address this, considering the fact that, media houses like Prathamalo and the Daily Star are being attacked there with some people? I mean, of course, even the Indian High Commission, people, diplomats there, fearing that this might escalate and bring some kind of a danger to them.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remind ourselves that there's a precedent to this. You mentioned the July Revolution, the protests that culminated August 5th, 2024, in the flight of Sheikh Hasina to India. and the arrival of a new interim government led by Professor Yunus. At that point, people forget, but India's diplomatic installations were attacked. India's cultural center in Dhaka, in the capital, was burned down. Several of the India's diplomatic staff had to leave the mission there. So I think in that sense, I think the first and foremost concern, of course, is the well-being of India's various diplomatic missions across the country, not only one in Dhaka. You mentioned, I think, Chittagong, which suffered also an attack recently in the last few hours. And there are several others. So that's one. And there's also a red line, of course, about the safety of other forms of Indian presence. We have thousands of Indian nationals that still live in Bangladesh. And we have, of course, Indian companies who are invested in Bangladesh. So that's a red line that is, of course, very important for India. But going beyond, to your point, I think the real concern is how do we reach that target, which are the elections in February that have been called. And not only any type of elections, but hopefully free, fair elections and safe elections. I mean, the way things are looking the last 1-2 days, I think, again, there's a question mark on the ability to hold these safe elections without mass violence, etc. There's always some incidents that can happen punctually. But overall, is it possible to ensure that the Bangladeshi electorate comes out peacefully to vote for a new, legitimate, democratically accountable government after February?
And how would you analyze India and Bangladesh relations going forward, consider the fact that it's not just diplomatic, it's also trade, agriculture, a lot of stuff that India and Bangladesh share. How do you analyze the relationship going forward?
So 2 points on this. One is we have to understand how Bangladeshis are looking at this. I was recently in Dhaka, and it always strikes me how people, young people particularly in very conservative movements, also like the Jamaat and more conservative elements of society, are really trying to cut with the past and cut with India in that sense. The perception is that the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina pandered to India, sold out the sovereignty of the country on economic issues with India, and that somehow now you have to move on without India. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. It's not black or white. If you look at the last 15 years, India, as you mentioned, has put in a lot of emphasis in trade, economic connectivity. It has built border posts. It has built new railway lines, waterways with Bangladesh. And therefore, the trade volume, for example, between India and Bangladesh has increased. At some point, India was exporting more to Bangladesh than to Russia before the Ukraine crisis. So this is an it's important economic relationship. But today, of course, if you hear the voices in the streets in Dhaka and across the country, these are voices that are trying to go to the opposite extreme and saying, India has no future for us. I think the second point I want to make, the only thing that you can do in these circumstances, of course, hold the elections, have a new government, which obviously will engage with India to pursue the trade, transit, connectivity agenda, and the win-win approach for both countries to benefit from more trade. And on the Indian side, I think if you look recently, there was a standing committee of external affairs report of the Parliament of India that came out with a report suggesting 33 recommendations on how to take India-Bangladesh relations forward. There are very good ideas in there on facilitating trade, building infrastructure. So I think we need to prepare the future beyond February. It's very difficult what's happening in Dhaka these days, and it may go in a very bad direction, but so far it is still a question mark, I'd say. And so far, we still have those elections on the horizon. So the only thing I think you can do is also start thinking a little bit what will happen post-February when things hopefully will get normal and stable again. And there'll be a modicum of some decent engagement between two governments that will look eye to eye and take the relationship forward.
Absolutely. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And as said, of course, a $12 billion trade that we share with Bangladesh, India, and Bangladesh. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how it happens. But thank you so much for joining on the broadcast and giving your insights.
Thank you.